Welcome to the world of exploration. Welcome to the world of learning. Let's start exploring. Let's start learning. Alright, so let's begin. There are a few reasons why writers might use pathetic fallacy. One reason is that it can be used to create a sense of empathy with the characters or setting in the story. For instance, if a character is feeling sad, the author might use pathetic fallacy to describe the weather as being sad or dreary. This can help the readers feel more connected to the character and their emotions. Clear? Another reason why and that authors might use pathetic fallacy is to evoke certain feelings in readers. For example, if an author wants to create a sense of dread or fear in readers, they might use pathetic fallacy to describe a dark and stormy night. This can help set the mood for the story and make readers feel more engaged. There are a few reasons why writers might use ekphrasis in their work. First, it can be a way to add more description and detail to a scene or to an object. This can help create a more vivid picture for the reader and make the experience more immersive. Additionally, ekphrasis can be used to create contrast or dramatic effect. By describing something in great detail, you can emphasize its importance or contrast it with something else in the scene. Finally, ekphrasis can simply be a way to show off your authorial chops. Describing something is beautiful. Poetic prose is a great way to demonstrate your skill as a writer. Onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia is a word that phonetically imitates, resembles, or suggests the source of the sound that it describes. For example, the word sizzle sounds like the sound a steak makes when it is cooked. Right? Onomatopoeia is often used in writing to create a more vivid and descriptive experience for readers. It can also be used to create humor or to add emphasis to a particular point. An epithet. An epithet is a figure of speech that uses descriptive language to characterize a person or a thing. It is often used in poetry to create vivid images and to add emotional weight to the poem. For example, John Keats' poem Ode to a Nightingale includes the lines, "Thou wast not born for death, immortal bird. No hungry generations tread thee down. In these lines, Keats uses the epithet immortal bird to emphasize the nightingale's immortality, contrasting it with the mortality of humans. Epithet can also be used to convey writers' feelings about the subject. Clear? Then there may be a better way of putting the question by the simple test alluded to above. When people are presented with a series of passages drawn indifferently from poems and stories, but all printed as a prose, they will show a dominant inclination to identify everything they possibly can as prose. This will be true, surprisingly enough, even if the poem rhymes, and will often be true even if the poem is in its original typographical arrangement would have been familiar to them. The reason seems to be absurdly plain. Readers recognize poetry by its appearance on the page, and they respond to the convention whereby they recognize it by reading it aloud in a quite different tone of voice from which from that which they apply to prose, which indeed they scarcely read it aloud at all. It should be added that they make this distinction also without reading aloud. Even in silence, they confer upon a piece of poetry an attention that differs from what they give to prose in two ways, especially in tone and in pace. Then poetry literature that evokes a concentrated imaginative awareness of experience or a specific emotional response through language chosen and arranged for its meaning, sound, and rhythm. Poetry is a vast subject as old as history, and although present wherever religion is present, possibly under some definitions, the primal and primary form of languages themselves. The present article means only to describe in as general a way as possible certain properties of poetry and poetic thought regarded as in some sense independent modes of mind. Naturally, not even tradition nor even local or individual variation can be or need be included about the article illustrates by examples of poetry ranging from nursery rhyme and epic. This article considers the difficulty of impossibility of defining poetry, man's nevertheless familiar acquaintance with it, the differences between poetry and prose, the idea of form in poetry as a mode of thought, and what little may be said in prose of the spirit of poetry. Poetry is the other way of using language. Perhaps in some hypothetical beginning of things it was the only way of using language, or simply was language tout quote, prose being the derivative and younger rival. Both poetry and language are fashionably thought to have belonged to ritual in early agricultural societies, and poetry in particular it has been claimed arose at first in the form of magical spells recited to ensure a good harvest. Whatever the truth of this hypothesis is, it blurs a useful distinction by the time there begins to be a separate class of objects called poems. Recognizable as such, these objects are no longer much regarded for their possible yam-growing properties and such magic as they may be thought capable of has retired to do its business upon the human spirit and not directly upon the natural world outside. Formally, poetry is recognizable by its greater dependence on at least one more parameter. The line then appears in prose composition. This changes its appearance on page, and it seems clear that people take their cue from this changed appearance, reading poetry aloud in a very different voice from their habitual voice, possibly because as Ben Jonson said that poetry speaketh somewhat above a mortal mouth. If, as a test of this description, people are shown poems printed in prose, if it most often turns out that they will read the result as prose simply because it looks that way, which is to say that they are no longer guided in their reading by the balance and shift of the line in relation to the breath as well as the syntax. Hence, the perennial squabble about distinguishing poetry from prose, which is rather like distinguishing rain from snow. Everyone is reasonably capable of doing so, and yet there are some weathers that are either neither. Sensible things have been said on the question. The poet T.S. Eliot suggested that part of the difficulty lies in the fact that there is a technical term verse to go with the term poetry, while there is no equivalent term to distinguish the mechanical part of prose and make the relation symmetrical. The French poet Paul Valéry said that prose was walking, poetry dancing. Indeed, the original two terms, prose and verses, meant respectively going straight and returning. And that distinction does point up the tendency of poetry to incremental repetition, variation, and the treatment of many matters and different themes in a single recurrent form, such as couplet. Yeah. Alright. Please do share, like, and subscribe to my channel so that you get notified whenever any video is uploaded. Please press that bell icon in order to get notified whenever I upload any such video, any such informative video. Please do like, share, and support our channel. I really need your help in order to take my channel ahead. Please do like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you, my dear learners.